this tape extends that first tape even further, because this is orientated towards the next homeowner of LogHaven, and it's going to provide to you all the technical information that I can think of to tell you, because I'm the only one that knows this, and it's very hard to figure it out once you've bought a house. So first thing I did want to mention is that the power to LogHaven is underground. You can see there's no power line going to the house, as you see over here. And this is the power source from this telephone pole. But power for LogHaven really comes down through this pipe into the ground, under the street. I don't know the exact route, but it goes on into the house in the basement, just left of the corner of the property. So we'll go look at that shortly. But before we do, the next item I wanted to point out up here is that this fake rock is covering over the water main cutoff for the house. Of course, this can only be closed by the township, but they keep a marker on it there to remind them where it is located. And they put a mark here on the street that this is where the water line comes, and it basically makes a straight trip underground all the way into the basement of the house, very close to where the electric enters the house. So, having said that, we'll maybe go up, and I'll describe to you next the roof that I installed in about 1997. It was a major undertaking, quite expensive, but I think well worth it. The construction of the ceiling is just 2x6 knotty pine tongue and groove over the whole surface of, you see it from the interior of the house. And then on top of that, when I re-roofed it, I took everything off.
Sun.
Yes, what about it?
It's in your eyes, can't see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so basically I sealed all of the knotty pine, and after that I caulked in between all the grooves of the knotty pine to make it completely airtight. Along the ridge was caulked too. Then on top of that was put the 6 inches of rigid foam insulation. And how that works, there's basically a 2x6 vertical along the complete perimeter of the house. So that made like a big bathtub in which this 6 inches of rigid foam insulation that consisted of one 4-inch piece and one 2-inch piece. And then on top of that is ice and water shield, which goes over the complete surface. And then on top of that is put a matrix of pieces of wood. And the pieces of wood that go up to the ridge have very long wood screws that go all the way down and anchor into the ceiling log beams. Then across that were put horizontal slats. And then this roofing material, which I can show you a sample of shortly, is then put on top of that. And the edge is actually vented. So if you look here at what is called the soffit is actually away from the roof by 1.5 inches. Then there's this Cobra shield that's put in between that area so bugs can't enter that area. So that provides complete roof ventilation. So ventilation comes up behind the soffit and exits through the ridge. The other thing I wanted to mention is over here on this shed dormer, if we come towards the front of the house, you can actually see where we had to actually not put the 6 inches of rigid foam insulation, because it would have put the roof up above the window. You know, it would have impeded on the window. So as we got close to the window, we had to not put the rigid foam insulation and put it back there as angle. As one complete gutter goes the complete span, and it all drains from this oversized downspout, which goes down into, again, this 4-inch Schedule 40 sewer drainage line. It's oversized because that's a significant amount of water can come off that roof at that time. And as a safety, here's another fake rock here, which has a clean out for that drainage line. I doubt if it'll ever be needed, but it's just a little insurance in case you ever had a blockage. And here you can see where the electrical comes into the house, comes up from underground, goes to the meter, goes back down, and enters the house into the basement, which we'll see shortly. And I'm going to be showing you later documentation that I have on LogHaven, and part of that has to do with the actual route of the drainage lines underground, so you can see exactly where they're located. But this drainage line, from memory, comes out to beyond this retaining wall, and then comes down this slope, and it then picks up another drainage line that picks up from this back part of the roof. This drainage line comes down here, so now you have the two coming together into one. Comes down further. You can see it's quite steep here. Comes down. You can see there's a nice drainage line that picks up the water that hits the roof. And this water comes from another downspout, which you can see against the wall on the far side there. So it picks up that water, which just travels over the surface and into the drain. But a lot of water comes off the sun porch. I did try to keep a rain gutter along the bottom of the sun porch, but what happens in the wintertime, when after a big snowfall, the snow will fall off all at once, and it just rips off any gutter that you would put up there. And again, I don't think I mentioned just on my previous film, but there is a small garage door here, and it is locked, but this opens into that area where the oil tank and all the garden equipment is kept. So that's very convenient. And if you did want to keep a riding mower there, it is possible to ride down there and to keep it into that space. So back on this drainage line again, keeps on coming down. Again, it picked up that drain there. That's the last drain it picked up. There are also drainage lines, which are perforated drainage line, at the base of each of these walls. The construction of the wall is basically built with a gravel, leveled. Gravel is behind the wall, and at the base of the wall there's perforated pipe to pick up any extra moisture. And those pipes sent out. We come down here. You can see, for instance, this flexible pipe is a drain for one of the drains behind the wall. You really don't get much water from behind the wall. It's more a safety procedure. But if you look over here, this is the drainage line for the line we were talking about coming down the side of the house. There are basically 4 altogether. Here's one. I won't go into more detail because all of these are described on the maps I'm going to be showing you. Here's another. Here's another. Ooh. And again, these pick up from behind all the walls, and it also picks up this downspout that you see here on the left side, which comes from basically all of the left side of the house. Quite a bit of water comes down there. So it's very nice that all the water off of the house and off of the driveway all come down through drainage lines into the drainage canal. And we already talked about the other drainage line on the other side, so let's pause for a minute and we'll start on another topic. So I forgot to mention this light post here. It's operated by a timer that's in the basement that we'll see. And it operates this light. I also have a dimmer, so I keep this light, you know, not at full bright, rather dim. So it looks very nice. And it's on the same circuit as these cable lights that are under each step. So the wiring basically comes, I don't know if I have this represented on a map, but basically it comes direct to the sidewalk, and then it goes straight along the sidewalk, picking up each one of these 4 steps. Then it comes along here, then it goes under this crawl space, and then goes into the basement. So that's one item I forgot to mention. Okay, we can pause. So I wanted to mention this storage under the front porch. I have a light for that area, but the switch is inside here. This is inside of the basement. And it's this second switch by the wall. And when I turn it on, you can see this little indicator light. So that just indicates to you that it's on. And what I've just done is turned on a cable light that's in that storage area under the front porch. So we'll go look at that now. So we've turned on that light. We're out here, and now we're going to come up to the access to the storage area. This is a very nice planting area because it's very well protected, and all these plants have done well. Although this one little walking stick tree looks like it's going to die. But if we come over here, this is the entrance, and what you do here, you simply lift this gate off, such as this, and just carry it out of the way. Here you can see my stained glass window from the other side in the basement. And if we look down here, we can see this storage space. Oops, the light has fallen off the ceiling. And it's rather dirty down there because I don't go in too often. But let me go in far enough just to show you a piece of this roofing material. And I have these shelves here for storage, and then you walk along here. I have this cart for moving it. But here you can get an idea of what the roofing material looks like. So it is a steel, I forget how thick, but it's quite thick. And then it's been covered with these many layers of epoxy. Then it has this heavy granular surface, and that's the 50-year warranty is against wind damage and against loss of that granular material. The only thing I would say about the roof that wasn't as good as I'd hoped, and that is you have to be careful where you walk on it, that you walk on the ridges. Otherwise you can put a crease in the metal. And the other thing is when it is extremely hot, you don't want to walk on the roof because this material gets so loose that it'll tend to come off. But this storage area is really nice to have for anything that's large, that doesn't need to be kept clean, but you need to have space to. It's just a little hard to get to, but it's always nice to have storage space. What I wanted to talk about next is the plumbing. First, basically the water, hot and cold water, and then I'll talk about the sewage draining line. Well, you remember where it comes in from the street, and this is where it enters through the wall, comes up to this meter, which is actually read automatically through the telephone line. That's what this connection is here. And then, so this is the singular source of water, comes through here, along here. And here's, I forgot to mention when we were out there, but there is a water faucet that is right near where the power comes in to the house on the outside right here. And this is a shutoff. I have ball valve shutoffs virtually everywhere, so it makes it very nice, and ball valves are very good for lasting a long time. This arrangement here is for the water softener. I forgot to mention that on the previous tape, but this is a new water softener. It works very good. It works on the usage. It figures out when it needs to recharge on its own, and it recharges on its own. And I installed a full-size 3/4 inch drainage pipe that is actually a flexible pipe that goes through a rigid pipe, and it goes all the way over to that sink that we saw by the washing machine. And it, of course, uses this drainage line for when it recharges the resins within the water softener. And what this facility is here, this is a facility to take it offline easily. So simply by closing these two valves and opening this one, you can make the flow go directly past the water softener without entering the water softener. And since they're connected on flexible lines, you can actually take this off then and do work offline without having to do any serious plumbing work. I might mention here too that I have one a line off of the water before the water softener. And this is very nice because this line feeds all of my water faucets. I have 3 additional water faucets outdoors in addition to this one. So any water that's used outdoors is not conditioned water. It's not softened water. So the only water that's softened is the water that goes into the house, which is this line here. And if we follow this further, let's maybe just pause here for a minute. So now we're just after the water softener, and what we have another line coming off the water line, comes down here, and this is the source for the hot water heater. Again, I mentioned on the previous tape that this water heater is 40-gallon super insulated tank. It's really made by Crown, the same manufacturer as the boiler, and it actually operates as a separate zone of heat to the boiler. I have a backup electrical water heater that I'll show you in just a moment, but this is really what I use for my primary. So in the wintertime, I leave the boiler is firing all the time, and it'll just fire for hot water as well as it'll fire for heat in any part of the house. In the summertime, of course, you're not calling for heat, so the hot water, the boiler has to run just to keep the water hot, but not necessarily save energy, but I just don't use that much hot water. I have two methods of controlling it being on. One is this little device here. I have what's called an X10 electrical system, which provides facilities for automatic switching. So long story short, the way I can do it, I can program a timer to make this hot water come on and turn off at certain times of the day. But actually what I do now in the summertime is whenever I want hot water, I have a on-off switch right here. It's on right now. But if I just turn it like that, there will be no hot water. So usually when I hot water, I just turn it on. It takes about 15 minutes for the water to get hot. That way you don't maintain the hot water if you don't need it. But you can do whatever you want there. To follow this hot water line, we can basically follow the hot water line, which exits the tank up here. So this is the hot water. And it goes to all of the hot water sources throughout the house, so I won't necessarily follow that, but it's just good to understand this is where it comes from. But let me mention this backup tank here for a moment. And actually, before I installed that boiler, this was the source for domestic hot water. This is an electrical tank, and when I installed the boiler, I no longer used it. But I hooked up the plumbing so that this tank can be used as a backup to that tank. So if you didn't want to use the boiler to heat your water in the summertime, or if your boiler broke down, something broke down, you can hook up this very easy. It has the same kind of quick disconnect on flexible lines, so it makes it very good, as the turn-offs. And it has a separate circuit providing energy to the hot water heater, and there is a timer up here that also allows you to control when the hot water will charge and when it won't charge. And to tell you how that came about is this home was built in '79 when you couldn't get gas service. So this house has no gas service. And for houses such as that, the electric company provides an incentive for people to use off-peak hours for energy. And if you use electricity for heating domestic hot water, they give you a special rate where they give you a lower rate during off hours and a little higher rate during on hours. And I still have that rate, although I don't use this any longer. But that was the reason for this timer, because they required a timer for that purpose. So that essentially covers the hot water. And maybe if we just stop it. So to identify those places where there are outdoor faucets, one is from this water line here, goes up here, goes into a T. One goes out the front of the house, and that's for the hose that's on the reel on the front porch. So that's a water faucet. The line also comes across here. Yes, comes down here. And there's another water faucet just outside this wall right here. Again, I have shutoffs on each one, and not all, but most of these water faucets are the type that have the valve inside the wall. So even if you didn't shut off the water really wouldn't freeze outdoors because the water is held inside the house. But having said that, there are shutoffs anyway. And while we're here, let me show you two other items. For the water that goes up to the kitchen sink, I have it go through this extra large carbon filter. I don't believe they make this size anymore, but I have about 10 other cartridges. I don't change it that often. It's hard to tell when it needs to be changed. But a carbon filter is really a chemical filter. It takes out chemicals. It's not necessarily a particulate filter. But it goes through this filter, and then it goes up to the kitchen sink, which is right above here. So that's an extra filter for the water that you use in the kitchen. And there is also a smaller filter right here, which is the filter to the ice maker for the refrigerator upstairs. It itself has a filter, but hey, another filter doesn't hurt. It's easy to put in. It's right there, so it makes the other filter last longer. And the last item I wanted to mention while we're here is the drainage to the sink has an extra spout here, which picks up the drainage water from the washing machine. And this is the drainage line that we saw from the water softener, where when it recharges, so the water comes all the way from the water charger, water softener, and discharges here. So there's one more outdoor faucet. Oh, there is also a shower outdoors too, again because of this outdoor pool that the previous owner maintained. And remember, again, all of these lines that go to the faucets outdoor don't go through the water softener. But this is also a water faucet outdoors. There's a hose reel there. Again, there's a shut off. Again, the valve is on the inside, so you really don't have to worry about freezing, but I turn it off anyway. And I forgot about it. There is an outdoor filter or an outdoor faucet also upstairs on the deck over the covered portion. So it's a level above us. This is the line right here, and basically there's the cutoff. I really don't ever use that, so I just leave that one off. And while we're here, there's a hot and cold shower just on the other side of this wall here, and that again was meant for the above ground pool. And here's the shut off for the hot and cold water, and this is actually where the valve is, and the shower head over there. So that's that just softened the water, though, come to think of it, but I don't use it that often. So back to this crown boiler. Again, it's called a Scotch Marine. That has to do with the way that the heat transfer works. And to explain this simply to you, this front door really opens. These 4 bolts comes off. I do this once a year. You have to disconnect the oil lines. I would say be careful when you disconnect the oil lines because there is a natural siphon of the return line going back to the oil tank. The oil tank is just on the other side of that wall. So you just disconnect the oil lines, then you're able to swing this door completely open so you can get complete access to the boiler itself. And what I do is I use my vacuum and I clean out all the carbon deposits every year to keep it clean. There usually aren't too many. But basically the way it works, the boiler fires in. It's a cylinder that it fires into. Then the hot gases can't go any further, so they have to turn around and come back to the front. And so that's on both sides, and the water jackets are in between for the water to be heated. So it's covered both ways. And then when it turns around, it makes a final turn, and then goes back to the back, and then exits. So it has a lot of back pressure, but it's a very efficient in terms of heat transfer. And basically the chimney goes out through a separate flue on the same chimney as the fireplace that we saw for the wood stove. And as I mentioned, there are actually 5 separate zones for heating. Each one of these represents a separate zone, meaning that each one is controlled by a separate thermostat at a separate location in the house. I have each one labeled. This is the living room, this is the basement, this is the upstairs, this is the office, and this is the sun porch. Remember I mentioned I never use the sun porch, so I actually have that one turned off with the water evacuated so the water wouldn't freeze in the wintertime because I don't heat that area. And what's a very nice feature here is I put this little pilot light on here to indicate when heat is being called for. So if the, let's say the water heater, if it wanted hot water and it called for heat, then this light would turn on, and what happens is it opens that valve, which also causes the circulating pump to circulate. So the water starts circulating through this zone, and it also tells the boiler that it wants to maintain the water temperature at what it's set at. So that causes the boiler to kick on and to stay on until it's heated to that level, and then it turns off. And I would just mention too that I have 2 filters, which is very nice, because if sludge gets into your oil line, into your burner, it'll clog your burner. It's also very easy. If you take a look here, if you do maintenance yourself, you can actually get access here. You basically disconnect this, take this out, and this is where the jet is. This is where the oil is actually atomized into a gas, so it can be fired. And you can take that out and clean it out very easily, or you can pay to have it done. It's whatever you prefer. But cleaning that on an annual basis is a good idea. And usually every time I change the oil, I check this filter first. And if it's dirty, I change it. And then I check this one. And usually they get dirty quite quick, but it's a good investment to change them often. These are on-off valves. And although I'm sure I work a lot differently than other people, I don't use much to heat. I average about a gallon a day, which is only 360 gallons a year, which is just a little over a tank full of gas. But if I were to heat the whole house with all burners, it would be a lot more. But the home is very airtight and very well insulated, so it is a very efficient system. And it's still quite new. I installed it in the 90s sometime. And to just go a little further, like this is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. So this is where it... and I actually forget. I think this is where it actually exits. So it goes out, and this is basically one big loop. So this is the living room zone. So this one will go up, and it'll go through all the baseboards that are in the living room kitchen area, losing its heat to the atmosphere, which is warming your space, which is what you want. And then it returns cold on the other side. I guess here's an arrow, so I guess it goes this way. And it comes back in here, so it comes back to then to be reheated by the boiler. So it's like the reverse of a radiator in a car, in that it's well, I guess it's just the same. The car is generating heat, and the radiator loses the heat, and it goes back into the engine and cools it. So that's the way it works. And this is just an expansion tank. This just accounts for when the water expands or contracts, or when you shut something off quick, you don't get any hammering effect. And this is a bleed valve that keeps air out of the system, so you don't have any air trapped in your vein. So that's really the complete functioning of the boiler. And I think the last thing I want to mention with hot and cold water is that I have the hot water lines insulated by these pipe insulators. So it doesn't do an excellent job, but it's better than nothing. So it helps keep the water warm in the pipe when it's just sitting in the pipe. So you can quickly tell which are the hot water lines simply by telling which ones are insulated. And as you can see, I went through everywhere and gave very good support to every line. There's virtually a bracket on every joist there. So it's excellent work. I did a lot of improvements on the plumbing, so I'm quite proud of it. I think I covered most of everything. Maybe one more thing with plumbing coming down here. And that's when I installed the Whirlpool bath. So I ran a new line, I can't forget what gauge, but a large line up here to service the pump for the Whirlpool gas, and also the heater that maintains the heat for the water. What you're seeing right here is actually the bottom of the tank and the drainage line with the trap. And although you can't see it very well, back there on the corner is an electrical connection. And if we come over here also, yes, if you come right over here, you can see I had to install a sub panel because I really needed 2 separate circuits, and I only had one heavy-duty line. So that one heavy-duty line comes into this sub panel. Sub panel is where you have circuit breakers after the main circuit breaker box. And there's a 15 amp circuit breaker on each of those two circuits, and one of the circuits serves the pump to the jacuzzi whirlpool bath, and the other serves as the heat or source for the heating element. That's the inline heater to maintain the heat of that temperature. So with that, that's the end of the water plumbing. So now let's go on to the drainage or the sewer line here. Yes. So the sources of and this is not only sewage, but this is also drains from any water drain that go into drains. Of course, from the bathtub, and there's also a sink over here and a john. That's all the sources here. So this is all drainage water. They all go into one large 4-inch Schedule 40 sewer line. You can see it goes right against the wall, sloped. Just slopes, goes all the way down. Just keeps on going down here across. So this is picking up everything from the first floor bathroom. And it comes to here. And here's a first major connection. And if we follow this line back here, this then makes a 90-degree turn and goes up between the walls up into the second floor. And this is all of the drainage for the upstairs bathroom, meaning the shower, the commode, and the sink. So it comes here, joins all together here. It's behind the wall here, but if we come around this way, you can see it ends up coming down right down here. So that's that line there. You can see it also picks up these drains here from the washing machine for this sink here. And actually this is a vent line. You know, drainage lines have to be vented. So this is a vent. This vent line actually goes out up to the second floor and out through the roof. There is another vent line for that kitchen over there. It's just part of code, but that's not water going out. That's just for the sewer gas to exit. Now the last source is the kitchen area. So what we have with the kitchen is basically just the kitchen sink. So that's this drain right here, the clean out right here. Comes down, comes down. So everything comes together at this point right here. So this is the sewer line. Here's a clean out right here. This is where it exits the house under the wall. If you follow that outdoors. Just outside the door is another clean out right here. It then goes under the sidewalk. We come over here. It really goes very close to the base of this tree. And here's another fake rock right here. And it's probably about 3 feet up where we started the change. So it's original pipe up to there. We made the transition. And now this is the first of the clean outs that we saw. This being, well, this is actually the second. First clean out, second clean out, third clean out is that large rock in front of the pagoda. And then there are 2 more clean outs behind the pagoda. And then the sewer main is on the back there where we saw before. So that's the totality of the sewer line. There's a nice feature here. I don't use it too often, but it is available. And that's this built-in vacuum. So this is the main canister here. All the debris cuts here. This is where the motor is. And basically the exit goes out through the wall into the crawl space below the porch. So I'm going to move this canister this way. And it turns on automatically when you ask for vacuum. So here's the vacuum hose and attachments for it. And basically when you open, maybe I have it turned off. Let me try another one. Basically when you open the switch, and I have 3 other outlets, and they're all in the basement. Here's one. So you put the device here, you have the door, and it all goes back there. There's another one here. And the last is over here. So, very nice feature. Yes. So now we'll get into electrical. It's quite complicated. I'll keep it at a high level. A little later on in this video, I'm going to show you documentation that I have that basically maps out all the electrical systems. But here you can just get a bird's eye view of what it looks like. So the power for the house, again, comes in. It actually comes directly into this electrical box. 200 amp, I forget how large this box is, whatever. Might be 100 or 200 amp, I'm not sure. But anyway, this is the main circuit breaker. So this turns off everything in the whole house, sort of like a panic switch. I have each of them numbered, which will relate to the documentation that we'll refer to later. Each one is, of course, identified as to the amperage that it provides. The ones that I have switched off are not in use. The double ones like this are usually for 220. But each of these circuits will relate to a cable that exits from the top of the box. So that's enough for the circuit breakers for now. We'll attend that later. And you might notice all of these cables are numbered. So this relates to the documentation we're going to be talking about. I just might show you one high-level document that I just keep right here for convenience. And what this is a matrix that shows vertically, it shows every room in the house. And then it shows horizontally every numbered circuit breaker. And then at the junction of each point, it shows how many devices, if any, that I have on that circuit. So if you were to look, let's say at the garage, for instance, you could see that there are 8 outlets and they're all served by L05. So if I wanted all the power to go off on the garage, that would be right here. And that's a 30 amp circuit. But we'll go to the garage next and you'll see how that's broken down into a sub-panel, just as it was with the Whirlpool bath that I showed you, and that there are more circuits off of this line. But you can learn of the actual mapping by just reading the document, so I won't go into that further. But basically, all of these lines go throughout the house. Again, the previous owner, John Caffaretta, was an electrical contractor, so he had some very sophisticated work done, but also he had made a lot of changes over time, and I have made a lot of changes myself, especially in this basement area. I added a lot of these lights. So it's been changed a lot over time, but it's all very well documented. To give you an example of maybe one circuit, it's with this sauna. This is a 220 circuit. Again, I mentioned it's unpluggable, and this is rollable. It services, actually, the 220 services actually a light, which is a 110, and the heating element, which is 220. But I use the same cable as the 220 source for the clothes dryer. So if you were to use the sauna at the same time you were drying clothes, that circuit breaker would break because that's more energy than that circuit can handle at one time. But that's just one example. I think that's probably, well, let's go on to the garage. I did want to show you that sub-panel. Again, the 30 amp line just comes across underground, enters the garage. And actually I have the 30 amp line come directly to this outlet, so there's actually 30 amp power available here on this one particular outlet. You can only get a 20 amp outlet though before they start getting different. So anyway, if you want high amperage, right here is the best place to go. But within the garage itself, there are a number of separate circuits. So I have that 30 amp service coming to this one sub-panel box, and I have these different circuits. I don't believe all of them are used. I have it in the documentation. But basically they control the lights upstairs, the power outlets, So this is all the power to the garage. This is the way the electrical works. There's very good exterior lighting at night. There are mercury lamps around the house. You can see there one under the deck. You can see one on this side of the house. There's one on the back of the house, and there's one on the other side of the house. And there are mercury lights on the back of the garage and on the front of the garage. So if you want a lot of lights on at night, you can certainly do it. There's a second lamp post that's also on a timer. It's right in front of that flagpole. It's a little hard to see, but it provides a nice light in the evening. And let me show you where those timers are now. So the timer to that lamp post is just above head right here. It's very easy to set. It's a brand new one, and it has a nice feature where you can set your what time zone you're in and where you live, and you can just set it to come on at sunset, and it varies its time with the time of the year. And I have them set to go off later on in the evening. There was that other lamp post that we saw in the front of the yard. Here, forgot to turn off this light here. So this is that light to the under the porch. And this is the second one. It's the same type. It works exactly the same. Very nice. And this is the dimmer switch that goes with that light. So if you don't want the light full bright, and this handles not only the lamppost light, but those lights under the stairs. So this is where that timer operates from. Next, we're going to cover the telephone system. So the telephone line, actually this is the telephone line coming in right here from outdoors. It actually just comes through the panel box. And I have quite a sophisticated system. I've done all the internal wiring for a telephone system, and I have many outlets on many telephones. But a very nice facility here is if I ever have a problem, you know, when you call the telephone company, you know, if you don't have maintenance for indoor wiring, you know, and you call them and it's a problem indoors, you're going to end up paying for it. So you need to, when you have a problem, you need to isolate whether the problem is inside your house or whether it's on the telephone line. So the easiest way for me to do that, I have this quick disconnect. And just by doing this, I've disconnected all of my phones. So everything, all of my indoor wiring is offline. So the only source I have here now is, when I put it down here, the only source I have right here is, this is the only wiring I have for indoor. So now I can test, and if it doesn't work this way, and it doesn't work the other way, then I know that the problem's outdoors, okay? But if it works this way, when I hook up a phone here, but then when I switch it back to my regular system and I use a regular phone and it doesn't work, then I know it doesn't work. So that's a very nice facility. And this is the interface block right up here. So this is the point of interface between the telephone company and inside the house. And also this box over here on the left. This has to do with the reading of the water meter at night by call on the telephone. I don't know exactly how it works, but that's how it works. But basically from here, I have one wire that goes out to the garage for the telephone. But all my other wires, if we come back over here, if you stand right over here, now turn around and look up, right here, you can see this. This is called a bus. A bus is basically where you can pick up, or a manifold. This is where you can pick up many sources. So I have my other main telephone wire come over here, and from here, hit that. So this is the wire coming in here, and this goes to a telephone outlet by the fireplace. This is for my internet connection. Excuse me. This is one actually for the garage here. This is one for the basement wall phone. That would be for the phone over there. This is a type of telephone in the sun porch, master bedroom, and the kitchen. And I actually have a telephone in the guest bedroom too. So this is basically a point where you can check either end of the wire. So one end of the wire would be here, the other end would be where the telephone is. So here at this point, this is where the 30 amp circuit goes out to the garage, and you can see the telephone wire too. They exit the house right here at this point. Go under the ground into the garage. Yes. So when I acquired all these beer signs,
light off. You turn off the lights.
This light? Turn off.
Oh yeah, leave it off for a second.
Yes. So you can see all the beer signs come on and off with the lights. So what I did after I decided where I wanted to install it, I installed an extra junction box for each beer sign that is off the light switch. So that way they all come on and off automatically. So now I want to do electrical information. And with electrical, I want to start off with this X10 system, which is very complicated to explain, so I just want to explain it at a high level. But what the X10 system does, it sends signals through your home wiring system to control electrical devices, so you don't need switches for them. And it has a wireless facility. So this is a control unit where I can switch lights on, and you can switch on more than one light at one time. And this is called a transceiver. So this picks up the signal from this wireless handset and then retransmits it throughout the home's wiring system. So this will cause, let's say, a light to go on or off. So for instance, if I turn this switch there, that turns really this light off, that light off, all the lights on my entertainment system, the lights on either side of the sofa, and also this light over here. So those are a number of circuits. So if I turn it back on, there you can see they all come on at once. And for instance, I don't have a wall switch for these two large lamps that are on either side of the sofa by the picture window. So what I can do is simply I put a X10 control device on the power outlet and then plug it into that X10 device. So if I push that switch, see, it's almost like having a wall switch. I can do it automatically and turn them on or off. That's part of the system that I was mentioning with the hot water system for turning lights on and off. Very convenient. I have a lot of documentation that will help you understand it, but it is a part of the electrical system. Maybe let me show you next this gang of switches by the front door. I have all these explained in writing, so I'm not going to try to explain everything here. But basically, this is the front porch. This is the lights that are controlled by the X10. This is a light on the ceiling fan. This is an overhead fan. This is an overhead fan. And this is that big, and this is an X10 controlled device too. This controls all those exterior lights around the house. So just by switching that one light, that makes all those mercury switches come on. So that's a good way to turn on all the lights. Now, as I mentioned, all of the switches are in the documentation, so I won't go over where the switches are. I just wanted to highlight that one to you because they're used very frequently. I've done a lot of cable lighting, which I already described in my previous memo, and these are halogen under counter lights, very good lighting. The dishwasher, I think I mentioned I don't use it very often, so actually what I did is I have a switch inside here where I can actually turn the power off to the dishwasher, because what I found out is when I would push up against it, I would turn it on erroneously. And also, if we look down here, might not be able to see it too well, but just to know that it's there, there's also a turn-off switch for the water source for the dishwasher, and there's a turn-off source. You can see that white box there. That's that instant hot water tap that comes out here. I end up not using that very often, so I leave it turned off. But if you leave it turned on, it'll always have hot water to it. And here's the garbage disposer right here. It's a expensive silent. each time you turn it on. It works out very well. That comes off this center part of the sink. And the electrical cable light around the top, and all the power outlets. I think I mentioned that before. So I think that's electrically about all that's interesting here. So what I want to do next is show you some of the documentation that goes with the house. Here are pictures of the major landscaping project that I did in 2003. We'll just do a quick review, but you can get an idea. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. You can really see what's underneath everything. Because honestly, in landscaping, it's everything that's under the surface, not what's on the surface. But you can see the extent of the project. It's well documented. There's the construction permit. A lot of before and after pictures. I have a lot of pictures of the drainage lines exposed. Here's the sewer line. You can get a view of it before it was buried. Here we are going across the land bridge. Yes, here's a truckload of mulch. This is all the mulch, the pine bark wood chips that I used for the planting beds. Yes, and this is near the end. I did all of the planting myself, so these are the planting beds. I first installed them. Yes. So you get some very good pictures of the area, and this is at the end. So this is all the pictures after it has been recovered. So those are nice to see. But more importantly, we have documentation on, let me show you the X10. So I won't go into this any further, but to say that this is all documentation on the X10 system and different devices. So you can read up on that, and if you ever wanted to change it or see what you have, all my documentation is in this, and these are all well filed in folders that will come with the house. This is a very important one. This is the document on the home electrical. So I wanted to just explain what you have here. And what you have here, if we look at this report first, this is basically a listing by circuit. So here's circuit L01A, and it goes all the way down to here. So all of this has to do with this one circuit breaker in that panel, which is labeled. And what it tells you here is that's a 15 amp circuit for a 110 volt surface. And it's serviced by cable number 5. So it would be the cable labeled number 5 is the one that relates to this circuit breaker. And it then just lists by room what is serviced by this circuit. So here in the living room on the north wall on the left side is one power outlet, and says this power outlet located on the leftmost window, fireplace, and is power source for the stereo, and normally uses 200 watts. So it just lists every outlet. Here's another outlet in the living room. Here's one in the office. Here's one in the office, another in the office, spare bedroom, on the sun porch, sun porch, sun porch. So this circuit really goes through quite a few rooms. And each outlet or wall switch or light is described, and if it has a regular power usage, I have it here, and then I total what the normal power usage would be on that circuit. And this is the same for each and every circuit. You can see this is quite a lengthy report, and it covers not only the main circuit breakers, but those two sub-panels that we saw, one for the whirlpool and one in the garage. But what makes this nice is then I take this same report and I sort it down by a room. So now if you're approaching this and you have a problem, or you have something in the, this is the first floor bathroom, it shows here that the first floor bathroom is serviced really by two circuits, L0B3B and L06. So that's a very quick way to be able to find out what circuit any particular device is on. So this is quite thorough, quite up to date, very nice to have for reference. So that's the two with electrical. There's some interesting documentation on this home This is a New England Log Home, which is a company that built log cabin kits for sale. They are unfortunately no longer in business, but they had a very good product. And here is some interesting sales brochure that you might see about their homes and their different products that they have for sale, and the different floor plans. This home is known as the Barrington. It's a very popular model. Yes, a lot of details about it in here. But just as interesting is this is the installation guide, if you wish, for when you buy from New England Log Home. You really don't get a home. What you get a flatbed truck full of logs that are pre-cut, okay? And you get this manual that shows you, how to erect the home from these separate logs, which are all cut for specific places. Of course, you have to do the foundation and all the other work, but that's very good detailed information on the log home itself. Now, this whole ring binder is complete with LogHaven documentation, so there's a considerable amount. I want to show you maybe one of the most important ones first. And this is the one relating to all of the planting beds, and it shows you two things. This is actually the area in the woods behind the drainage canal. So what this does is this simply identifies each tree. So each tree in its position, you could find, in fact here it shows a clean out spot, the pachysandras are here. But if you wanted to find out what kind of tree that one was over there, it was a P80, and if we go look that up, you would find out that's a Scotch pine. I'll show you where that's defined elsewhere. But more importantly, in front of the drainage canal, each planting bed, like this is the planting bed between the house and garage. So this shows the actual route of the soaker hose that's in place under the mulch and above the landscaping fabric. So I have it loop around a lot of plants. And it basically shows where you connect up to the soaker hose to water those plants. So the way soaker hose does it, just weeps water out through its complete length. And I did try that in the beginning, just make sure it worked, but I've never really had to water the plants. It would be only in a stream drought would you have to worry about that. So just a very quick look, you can see this is very detailed on every planting bed that is there. But in conjunction with that is the documentation that translates each of the codes to the specific plant. So if we saw here, we saw here on the map there was a H40. We come here, we find out that's a holly. It's Gold Coast English holly. It's this is its scientific name. It says deer resistant, small variegated green and yellow leaves, full to partial sun, male plant, no berries, white small flowers. So this is basically the information that you get from the nursery when you buy the plant. So I've kept and documented all of this. So it's a very thorough document, but it's just one of many documents that I have in this binder. I might show you a few other that are important. There's an index on the first page. First one I thought was important are the property tax information. So these are property tax bills. I also have a record of all my property taxes that I paid over time. So let's see. This is back in 1977. I was paying $1,200. That was on my other house. So when I first moved here, it was about $4,100 for tax, and now it's almost $8,000. So there you can see property taxes over time. Let's see, what else do we have? We have this shows my oil usage. So this is when I said I average a gallon a day. Basically, if you look through all this, every time I fill it up, I measure, see how much oil I have, see how many days went by, so I can average out how much average fuel I consume each day. And through the winter and through the summer, the average turns out to be just about one gallon a day, which is very good. I saw something that would be good here. This is the actual surveyor's map that was taken when the property was surveyed when I purchased it. Here you can see the thing with the property line. The previous owner actually had a fence that went off the property that I had to remove when they built that house next door. in here too is that curb permit that I mentioned, and so if you and the variance I got for the sun porch. So if you're ever given trouble about that, you still have those permits. Yes. So this is very important. When I mentioned all the drainage lines, so this is a mapping of the route of all the drainage lines as they go underground. So this would be on this side of the house that we talked about. So this is the up front corner. If you remember, we walked down here. Here's that second one picking it up. Here's that one from the ground drain picking it up here, and then it goes all the way and exits. So for each drainage line, this is the sewer line. And this actually shows where each connection is on each pipe. Shows where the cleanouts are. And I actually have a picture you'll see in a minute of the sewage line. This shows the actual property line location. As here shows the rock, and here shows the location. I have reference markings, so you can see exactly where it is. Here's the property line on the other side of the property. There's no problem on that side. This is another drainage line, another drainage line. This is the power from the house to the garage. And these are landscaping plans. Here's a picture of the exposed sewer line, 2 of them, as you can see. Gives you a good idea where they're located underground. So those are very helpful. And let's see if we can finish it off here. Yeah, I showed you that. There's a number of guarantees. There's a guarantee on the roof. There's a guarantee on the sun porch. There's a guarantee on the retaining wall. There's this fumigation I want to tell you about. But let me jump quick to 12 here. There's a tremendous number of maps here. This relates to the landscaping work that I did and the plans that I had to file with the township in order to get the permit to do the work. So I've kept all of that. Thing that I want to mention last is fumigation. One of the unpleasant surprises that I found about LogHaven is that it had this slight infestation of what are called old house borers. Now, yes, so I wanted to tell you the few bad news items that I haven't mentioned before. Of course, I mentioned the one with the property line. That was something that I wasn't aware of when I purchased the house. That wasn't too nice. The second thing that I encountered is after being here several months, I found out that there was some kind of infestation in some of the logs. It wasn't severe, but at certain areas I would find particles of wood. And after a long investigation and research, long story short, I found out that this home had what's called old house borers. I did have a termite inspection. There's no evidence of termite damage, but old house borers are wood-destroying insects that basically don't need a source to ground as subterranean termites do. So I didn't think such a thing could exist, but I unfortunately found out it to be true. It was hard for me to quantify how bad the problem was. So I basically, first I tried to treat it by a borate solution being injected into the wood, but that didn't work out at all. And what I did is I waited till the first summer. I found out exactly what their life cycle is. They stay within the wood in a larval state for about 11 years. And then as adults simply to lay eggs and reproduce and die. And what I did is in the summer I counted how many adults that I found, and I found probably about 15 that accumulated over the summer in this area. And I identified the areas that were worst. The worst areas were areas that were warm. If I can give you an example, if you come over here, they stay in the wood, and these are actually exit holes. And this is actually where they come out rather than go in. I did talk to the previous owner. He was completely unaware of it. He thought that they were carpenter bees. But no, they're exit holes. They aren't entry holes. And I decided that it did need to be treated because the problem never clears up on its own. And when they turn into adults, all they're going to do is reinfest the wood. And They were in the wood originally. Apparently old house borers are endemic to pine, or red pine, which is this house, which comes from Massachusetts. So it was in the wood to start with, and at the time this was built, they simply treated the wood by soaking them in penta, which is a certain thing that was really only treated the surface. It didn't treat the whole wood. What they do now, they have a borate solution that can treat the whole wood, but my house didn't have it. So long story short, I had a full house tent fumigation done of the house with Vicane, and it cost me $6,000. The other estimate I had was $12,000. So it made $6,000 sound cheap. But the good news is it did solve the problem. I was a little skeptical that it would be able to treat the complete log, but honestly I found out the old house borers, they stay near the surface of the log, and the Vicane is so volatile that it penetrates deeply into all areas. So basically, after I had this done, I've seen no evidence of old house borers. In fact, come here, I can show you an example of what they look like. Just these little boogers right here. There's a big one, and there's a little one. So, and they steer near the surface of the wood. The worst infestation was right there on this log by the skylight, because that was a very warm area. But the areas that were infested before, I've never seen any sign of them before. The guarantee lasted for 2 years. I could extend it by paying an annual fee, but I decided this is a problem of the past. So as far as I'm concerned, I've given full disclosure there, and there is not a problem any longer. So that's it. Other thing that I'm not too happy about, although I think it might have a solution, it's a minor problem, it's with the roof. And what I find is, especially in the wintertime, I believe that squirrels are somehow getting in under the roof and being able to live under the roof, particularly in this area right here. And I believe that there's really virtually no spot for an animal that large to enter that area. Mice could fit up there, but I find it hard for a squirrel. So if you come here, I think where they're entering is up here in this area. And I have put a blockage up there. And I'm going to see this winter, if I hear any activity anymore, I'm going to try to block it further. But it's just in this area where I hear movement sometimes that concerns me. So that's the other bad thing. And maybe one final thing, well, maybe just pause right here. So another item I do want to mention, but it's really not a problem, but you should be aware of it, is that there are 2 houses in the neighborhood that have had foundation problems, significant foundation problems, because generally this area is very marshy. And so the 2 houses down this way, I won't go into it in detail, but basically they had a foundation problem where they had to take the house up off the foundation and drive pilings down and put the house back on. So I was very focused in on the foundation, but it looks like John Caffaretta did an excellent job. Because on very close inspection, when I purchased the house, there was simply one small crack in the foundation somewhere along this wall, but honestly, I can't find it now. And there obviously has been no growth to that over the time that I've owned the home. So in my mind, there's not a foundation problem. One of John's sons came back and visited me one time to see the house. And he told me that they were aware of the problem with the ground in this area, and that this foundation goes down at least as far as the height of this wall. So that means that below us, this foundation goes down to its footing a good 8 to 12 feet down. So there's been no sign of a problem. There is a slight dip here in the concrete, but I think that was from the original pouring of the concrete, and it hasn't moved, hasn't changed. And in the garage, I believe the garage was built after the house separately. It has had a slight foundation problem in several areas. It wasn't built as significantly, but it's not a big problem. I think we might as well just go out and show you very quickly, because there are a couple of cracks, small cracks on the floor, and if you look around the foundation, there are a few cracks. You don't see any cracks here at all. Very stable, very flat, no problem. But if you look in here, you can see there's a crack. It's drawn a little bit. Goes along here. And if you come over here, you can see some cracking down here. And then over in this corner, although there's no cracking on the foundation, there's a slight crack on the outside of the foundation. But these are not significant. They haven't grown at all since I've owned the home in '88, so I don't consider them problems, but I have disclosed. Yeah, so I wanted to tell you a little more detail about the wood stove. On many of the items, I do have the original owner's manual, so that information is in writing. I wanted to tell you stuff that isn't in the manual, but I'll just tell you a little bit about the wood stove first. Again, it's a Vermont castings. It's very nice. It's porcelainized cast iron. You actually load it from the top here. If you look here on the top, these doors do open. Out in the garage I have a screen so you can run it with open, so it's like a fireplace. I never really did that myself. This let me get the handle for that. Oh, just there. Yeah, so this door opens also. It has this removable catch here. Just goes to the side. I forget which way it goes. I guess it goes this way. Yeah. So this door comes out first. This comes out second. The screen would go over that. Again, I really don't run it open. I run it closed. You can just open it up every once in a while to clean off that glass. It's tempered glass, of course. And you actually feed it from above. So there's two controls here. One is this baffle right here. So when you want to load firewood before you open the top, you pull this lever forward, and what that lever does, this baffle, it opens this baffle. If you see this baffle right here, what this stove has is called a combustor, and that's like a catalytic converter in here. And what that does is it enables you to run with a lower lower temperature fire, and yet it'll burn off the volatile combustibles that are in the exhaust gas by going through this catalytic converter. So by opening this, you make a more direct route for the smoke to exit, so it doesn't come out the top, because there's already a draft going. And you just load in the wood there. When you close that back up, and two, you leave that open until the wood has a good burn on it. You close that baffle again to give you better combustion. And to control the intensity of the fire, there's basically a control here, and that controls the input combustion air to the fire. Now, another nice, a very nice feature of this stove is that I've ducted. If you come around here to the side, you might be able to see on the bottom there yes. So if you're looking down here, what I did, I took the old, this is the exit chute for the ash, if you were to have a regular conventional fire, and I just put an adapter there, so there's an airtight seal, so all the combustion air comes up from the basement, so that's very nice. So you're not using your warmed air for combustion air, so all the air comes in through here, and it's controlled through this control here, which controls how much oxygen gets to the fire, and of course the more oxygen, the faster it burns. And I usually let it burn pretty much at a full rate until at night, and then I usually dampen it down. Usually the next morning it's cool, still has embers, so I can refire it. But after a full day or maybe 2 days of firing, you do need to get rid of the ashes, and that's very convenient. What you do is you can actually do this while the fire is running. It's fairly safe to do. You actually turn this latch here, and you can see this opens, and so the grate, when all the ashes fall through, they fall all to this pan. So when you open this pan, you have this cover that simply goes over the top here, and provides a very fail-safe way. And what I do is I just take it outside and I put it in a metal, small metal barrel. Make sure it's metal, and I leave it there for a good. Actually, I have two, and when I fill up the second one, I empty the first one. That way, you make sure all the embers are out. And actually, I don't put it in the trash. I recycle it. I just use my backpack blower and spread it around the outside. But it's very, very easy to use. But the things that are unique that I also wanted to mention is the adapter. That is how the smoke pipe here that exits on the back, how it connects to the flue of the chimney. It's a, I had a special adapter made to make that an airtight seal. And then this vertical member that you can see coming down here, this oval shaped stainless steel piece, it was purchased. So that goes into the adapter. But every summer after you're finished using the fire, if you've used it significantly, it's a good idea to take this bottom off. It just comes off with screws, because there's typically ash that has a creosote that's been in the chimney flue itself and has fallen down and accumulates into this piece. So you simply remove this piece, take the ash out, maybe knock off any other ash that might be there, and that's basically clean out as well as you can at the end of the year for use next year. But I wanted to go outside now and show you what I use for the top of the chimney, because if you don't put anything on the top, when it rains, when you have a good fire going, the rain really doesn't damage the fire very much. But when you either don't have a fire or have a weak fire, if there's a heavy rain, you get a lot of water in here, and so you start to have a scent of wet ash. So that's why you like to keep on top. And I have a very nice top that I want to show you. What I do about the flue, I've never really had a chimney sweep come and clean the flue. I just use a very long stick. I get up on top of the roof, and I just use that stick, and I scrape all four sides. In fact, I do that first, and then I come down and I empty this, because a lot of the debris that comes down to here. The flue is typically dry. It's not wet, so I've never seen enough accumulation to worry about a fire, because I have a very good combustion. But it's always good to keep that clean. I want to go outside now and take a look at the piece that I have that goes on the top of the flue. And when I'm not using the stove, what I do is I take and cover the top, so there's no air exiting the chimney when it's not in use. So maybe we'll pause now. For getting up on the roof, what I found best is I believe it's a 10-foot ladder. But basically, you just bring the ladder and put it here, so the top is very close to there. Just climb the ladder, and it's very easy to get on to the roof, and you can basically climb everywhere on the roof from here. We aren't going to go up there, but I'm going to show you the top of the chimney and what I put on the top. And when you walk on the roof, if you look over on the garage roof, where you want to walk right on the leading edge, because under the leading edge is a 2x4 to each one, whereas away from the leading edge there's nothing supporting the center. So if you just walk on those leading edges, that prevents it from getting bent over time. Okay. Top of the chimney, and you can see the leading flue, the one closest to the street, I keep capped all the time, so that way rainwater doesn't enter. And of course that's the one that I clean out after I use the wood stove for a year. The rear flue is the flue for the oil burner, so that's on a separate flue. Okay. So what I wanted to show you here is this flue cap that I put on before I use the wood stove. So I take that cap off, I replace it with this. This has these flanges here, so this goes down inside the flue, and it just sets by gravity right here on this level. It has a grate, but the key to this flue is that it actually improves draft. That is, it improves the suction of the flue gases coming out, and it's a wind vane, so it's directional. It'll point in the direction, so if the wind's blowing this way, it creates a partial vacuum here, so this gives you the better combustion. But just as important as a good draft is it keeps most of the rain out. because you can see it's covered. The problem is if you have a cover like this, you get so much creosote around and it starts dripping. So this is made such that it really doesn't drip. I do clean it off every year because there is quite an accumulation. This little cup here keeps the bearing from getting all greasy from creosote because it needs to spin freely. But basically I put it on when I use it, wood stove in the winter, and then I take it off in the summer when I'm done. Keep it up here. The last item related to the wood stove is this is the clean out access door to the ash pit. So this is directly below the hearth of the fireplace. But this is where the combustion air enters for the wood stove. So you want to just make sure to leave this door open when you're just leave it open all winter, and that allows the combustion air to enter here, go up through that 4-inch pipe and into the wood stove. So